Good morning. Welcome back to the Liberal Union 9/11. It is Saturday, December 20th, 2025, and this is your comprehensive morning news briefing covering a world that seems to be shifting beneath our feet as we approach the final days of the year. We begin with a massive escalation in the Middle East that has sent shockwaves through the international community. Overnight, the United States Department of Defense confirmed a wave of high-intensity airstrikes across central Syria, an operation that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has pointedly described as a declaration of vengeance. This military action comes as a direct and swift response to the tragic deaths of 3 Americans, 2 service members and a civilian interpreter, who were killed in a targeted insider attack in Palmyra just last week. The Pentagon reports that U.S. fighter jets and attack helicopters struck over 70 suspected ISIS infrastructure sites and weapons caches across Homs, Raqqa, and Deir el-Zor, aiming for the total elimination of the group's operational capacity. Yet the sheer scale of the bombardment has regional leaders warning that we may be on the precipice of a much wider, uncontrollable regional conflict. Meanwhile, closer to home, the geopolitical standoff with Caracas has reached a boiling point as the Trump administration intensifies its pressure on the Maduro government, which it has now officially labeled a foreign terrorist organization. Following a sweeping executive order that effectively initiated a total blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers and a closure of regional airspace, Secretary of State Marco Rubio declared yesterday that the intolerable status quo in Venezuela must end, signaling that direct military intervention is no longer just a threat, but a live option on the table. While the administration dismisses concerns over Russian escalation, citing Moscow's preoccupation with the ongoing war in Ukraine, global oil markets are already reacting to the blockade with heightened volatility as the U.S. expands its naval presence in the Caribbean. Turning to the halls of power in Washington, a legal storm is brewing following the long-awaited release of the Epstein files. In compliance with the Epstein Files Transparency Act, the Department of Justice yesterday began the process of declassifying several 100,000 documents, including travel logs, photographs, and grand jury records from the sex trafficking investigations of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. While the administration highlights that early analysis shows extensive mentions of former President Clinton and claims minimal new exposure for President Trump, despite recently surfaced emails suggesting prior knowledge, congressional Democrats like Roa Khanna are already sounding the alarm, accusing the DOJ of excessive redaction and threatening to prosecute any official, including Attorney General Pam Bondi, who attempts to obstruct the full transparency promised by the law. In a significant shift for domestic policy, the Ministry of Home Affairs has officially notified a major change to the Border Security Force recruitment rules, announcing that 50% of all vacant constable posts will now be reserved for ex-Agnevirs, a massive jump from the previously proposed 10% quota. This move, designed to provide career continuity for those completing their 4-year military service, includes significant age relaxations and exemptions from physical tests, though it has already reignited fierce political debate regarding the long-term impact on the professional standards of India's central armed police forces. Across the globe in South Asia, Bangladesh is currently a nation on a knife's edge as violent protests continue to paralyze Dhaka following the death of student leader Sharif Osman Hadi. Hadi, a prominent figure in the 2024 pro-democracy uprising and a vocal critic of New Delhi, succumbed to his injuries in a Singapore hospital after being shot by masked gunmen. His death has transformed national mourning into a volatile anti-India movement, with protesters accusing the neighboring power of political interference and targeting media outlets perceived as sympathetic to the previous regime. The United Nations has called for an impartial investigation as the interim government struggles to maintain order ahead of the scheduled 2026 elections. On the environmental front, the post-mortem of the COP30 summit in Belém, Brazil has yielded a grim outlook for the planet. Despite the launch of the Belém mission to 1.5 degrees Celsius and a new target to triple climate finance to $1.3 trillion per year by 2035, a new MIT report warns that current global policies are failing to meet the critical temperature benchmarks of the Paris Agreement. With petrostates successfully blocking explicit language on phasing out fossil fuels, researchers suggest we are now locked into a current trend scenario that could see the frequency of extreme weather events double by the end of this decade. Despite these compounding crises, the year-end economic data presents a paradox of optimism. The latest McKinsey Global Survey reveals that private sector executives are entering 2026 with higher confidence than at any point in the past year. This surge is largely attributed to the rapid, stable integration of agentic AI into business functions, with 88% of organizations now utilizing AI to automate complex reasoning tasks, and a stabilizing trade environment, even as inflation remains a persistent shadow over North American markets. Finally, in a lighter but no less revealing look at our evolving social landscape, the Gen Z stare has officially been recognized as the top workplace trend of 2025. This phenomenon, characterized by a silent, blank expression in response to traditional social scripts or out-of-touch corporate humor, has become a flashpoint for generational disconnect. While some managers view it as a lack of professionalism, researchers suggest it is a profound form of social critique and a refusal to perform the toxic positivity of previous eras, signaling a fundamental shift in how the next generation of the workforce views achievement, mental health, and the very nature of employment as we head into the new year.